Welcome to Crosstalk Solutions. My name's Chris, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Netgate pfSense 4100 appliance. This is a great little appliance for small businesses, and in this video, we're going to take a quick look at the device itself, but mostly we're going to do a basic initial configuration of pfSense to get this thing set up the way that we would set it up for a small business, essentially with a secure LAN as well as an isolated guest network. But first, if you guys haven't already, make sure you give a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to Crosstalk Solutions for 2 to 3 brand new tech videos every single week. And we are just about 2 weeks away from our first ever in-person, in-depth, hands-on training called Crosstalk's Fundamentals of Networking, where while it's designed to be network agnostic, we are going to be featuring Netgate appliances and setting up pfSense and learning all about how we do best practice business implementations on this platform. So whether you are a junior level IT network administrator looking to take your skills to the next level, or a seasoned, hardened IT veteran who's just looking to brush up on some industry best practices, this is going to be a really good training course that has something for absolutely everyone. Guaranteed you will learn something, plus we're going to be doing some extra fun stuff after hours as well. So that is August 9th through 11th in Austin, Texas. Check out events.crosstalksolutions.com for more details. Before we hop into the initial configuration of this device, let's take a look at the hardware itself. So the Netgate pfSense 4100 MSRP is $599. They also have annual tax support of various levels if you do need that sort of 24/7 support assistance or one of the lower tiers of support. This device is a fanless design, and you'll see on the bottom here is this massive heatsink. Now also, while this is a desktop form factor, it is wall mountable, and they also have a rack mount accessory if you do want to put this into a 1U, or it will fit into a 1U space in a network rack. One of the reasons that we really like the 4100, especially for smaller medium business where uptime is absolutely essential, is this is the lowest model of Netgate appliance that will do high availability. So you can get 2 of these devices. You can use one of the ports on the back as a high availability port that does a heartbeat between the 2 devices, and it will keep you up and running. And that is a scenario that we set up over and over for businesses that need it. As far as the hardware itself, the Netgate pfSense 4100 features an Intel Atom C3338R dual-core processor at 1.8 gigahertz and 4 gigs of DDR4 RAM. As far as the network goes, on the back here we have 2 combo WAN/SFP ports. So for WAN 1 and WAN 2, you can do either an RJ45 Ethernet or it has a 1 gig SFP cage. Then we also have 4 switch ports, and by default, those are combined as a switch. So your quote-unquote LAN interface is these 4 switch ports combined. But of course, being that it's pfSense, all of that is fully customizable. For instance, if you wanted to set 2 of these up as an HA set, you'd remove one of the ports out of that LAN switch and use that for the HA heartbeat between the 2 devices. Let's move on to the initial configuration of this device, and we're going to step through this in kind of great detail. So I am not this company's foremost pfSense expert, although I have dabbled around with pfSense quite a bit. We do have an in-house guy. His name is David Barger. You've seen him on the channel before, and David has been nice enough to agree to come back on here and show us how he configures this, sort of the foundational base setup for any of our customers that are utilizing pfSense. So let's go ahead and hop right into that initial configuration. All right, Dave Barger, welcome back to the channel here, and you're going to walk us through essentially a basic rudimentary setup of pfSense like you would do for any client that approaches you. And we'll talk about some of the more advanced stuff, but we're just going to kind of do the absolute basics here.
Awesome. Yeah, let's jump in. Go ahead and get us signed in.
Yep, so by default, username and password, admin, and then pfSense. And just so you guys are aware, The way that I have this Netgate 4100 configured is I have my Starlink connection plugged into the WAN 1 port, and I have my computer, the secondary Ethernet interface on my computer, plugged into the LAN 1 port on the back of the 4100, and I have set my secondary Ethernet interface to 192.168.1.99 because the default IP for pfSense is 192.168.1.1, just like every other router in the world, which is actually kind of a pet peeve of mine, honestly. All right, so logging in, admin, pfSense, and now we are going through the pfSense Plus setup wizard. So this part I can figure out. We're just going to say next. Then we have a message about Netgate global support. We're going to say next. Okay, so anything I need to be concerned with here?
Yeah, so this is a great place to start. In a small office environment, sometimes it's a good idea to go ahead and change your host name away. If you're using like a Windows domain server or something of that nature, you'll likely already have a schema in place for this. If you're not going to be using this too much, you could leave it as default or change the host name to like router dot smalloffice.arpa or whatever your business name is. I'll leave this entirely up to you of what you'd like to leave this at.
All right, I'm just going to say pfSense dot Crosstalk Solutions dot local.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is put the .crosstalk solutions.local in the domain section.
Oh, gotcha. So hostname pfSense, and then right here. Does it have to have the dot, or can I just pull that off?
You can get rid of that. And then go ahead and, this is the point where I would, talk with the customer and explain, this is where DNS would be entered, whether they want to stick to whatever their primary ISP is using for the system level DNS for this. My preference is generally putting in like Google with a backup of Cloudflare.
Gotcha. So that would be an 8.8.8.8 with a 1.1.1.1.
Yep. And I allow it to override whatever it pulls from the WAN.
All right, so we'll say next. Time server, let me select my time here. I'm GMT -8. Where are we? There we go. And I'm just going to keep the NTP as default.
Yep. I just leave it as default.
So configure WAN interface. All right, so what am I putting in here?
Yeah, so if you have a static IP address from your provider, you would put all of that information in there. The nice thing is with DHCP setups, you pretty much just leave it at DHCP. You can scroll down, and there shouldn't be really much we have to add at this point. If you got PPPoE, maybe you have DSL, make sure you put that stuff in. But for us, the last thing I want to point out here is the RFC 1918 networks. If you have a double NATed ISP, you want to go ahead and allow that through. So uncheck the RFC 1918. I believe with Starlink you will have a double NAT, so go ahead and uncheck that.
I actually don't think I will. Is this
awesome.
Something that I can change later? I am lucky enough to have the first version of the Starlink dish where nice. I am just plugged directly into the dish, and I should get the actual IP address from Starlink.
Oh, wonderful. So yeah, if you have like a public IP on that, you just leave it how it is. The reason it's blocked there is there are some types of attacks that essentially, they'll try contacting your WAN interface with a local address, also just like spamming and things like that. So go ahead and click next.
Okay. And this can always be changed later if we need to.
Yeah, certainly. You can change this under the WAN settings.
Okay, so here's the LAN setup. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to leave it as 192.168.1.1, right? This is just for, because that's easier for the video. But if you did want to change your LAN subnet, this is where you would do it. Like if you wanted 192.168, 42.1 or something.
Exactly.
Just keep in mind, if you do change your LAN subnet, you are going to have to also change whatever you're connecting to the pfSense with, if it's like set statically. So for instance, in my case, I have 192.168.1.99 set statically on my secondary Ethernet interface. If I changed this subnet scheme, I would have to also change the static IP on my secondary interface. Now, when exactly would that happen though? After the wizard is done, does it like apply all those settings and reboot?
Yep. So in this case, you'll run through the end of this, and then it will do a router reload. At that point, that's when you have to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to say next. We're just going to keep it simple here. And then we have our admin password. So I'm going to do a really strong password. Let's see. Does it actually measure the strength?
Let's find out. I don't remember.
I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Obviously, in a real-world environment, do not use a password this simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is just for the purposes of our demonstration here. So we're going to say next. Hey, it let me use it. Okay, so click reload to reload pfSense with new changes. Let's go ahead and do that now. And a reload is in progress. Please wait. A wizard will redirect to the next step once... Oh, that was quick. I didn't even get a chance to finish reading it. Okay, so congratulations. pfSense is now configured. We recommend that you check to see if there's any software updates available. Do you recommend clicking the button here?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. There are multiple places to check for updates inside of pfSense. I always just check it here through my first run-through. It will also pop up on the dashboard if you miss this part.
Okay, so we're going to check for updates. And confirmation required to update Netgate pfSense Plus systems. It looks like it's retrieving some updates, I assume, from the internet through Starlink.
Yep, absolutely. This is a great way to test to ensure that, you at least have a network or an internet connection from your router outward.
And if we didn't, it will eventually error out, I assume?
So it likely will stop spinning that gear. There we go. So unable to check for updates. A good example.
All right, so let's go figure out what's happening. So where would we now check? What would be the next step here?
Yeah, so let's do this. Go ahead and click on the pfSense Plus up in the upper left, and let's check and see what's happening on the dashboard. The things I always start with... Oh yeah, go ahead and click accept.
Okay. Just in looking here, I do see an IP address at the WAN level.
Right. That's the first thing I always check. Make sure that's working. It looks like maybe there was an issue there with just that web page because it does see an update available now.
Yeah, I see that.
My next troubleshooting step, whenever I would see something a little bit strange like this, I would likely try a ping directly from the firewall just to ensure it's working. The way you do that is up in diagnostics and then ping. And of course, you could go straight to an FQDN to test DNS, or we could go to an IP address.
Yeah, let's just try this here. Ping. All right, well, that seems like it worked.
Awesome.
Let's try an FQDN as well.
Okay, so maybe it was just an issue with that initial updating page. If we go back to the dashboard, that's the most common place to push an update. We could go ahead and let's see here. It checked Wednesday, July 20th. Okay, yeah, so it was very recent. We can go ahead and push
Wednesday,
that.
July 20th. That's tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's concerning.
Interesting. So, because today is the 19th, but I mean, I would think like, well, maybe the time zone is goofy or something. It does say UTC.
Yep. Okay.
This says +8.
You should be
so
minus
UTC
8.
+8 might be tomorrow morning at 1:46 a.m. Did I say I might have said +8 instead of -8 during the initial setup wizard? So let's do that first. Let's check the time zone. Where do we do that?
So up under System, and I believe it's under General Setup.
Let's see if I messed up the time zone. No, it does say GMT -8. Oh, 8 hours. GMT 8. Oh, it's GMT-8. Okay, 8 hours ahead of GMT. That's what's happening here. All right, so we want to go GMT minus... No, that's the same one. GMT...
I think it may show something
Here
like...
it is, right here. So 8 hours behind GMT.
There we go.
Or can you just say, like, Los Angeles?
I think Los Angeles
US Los Angeles. All right, let's see if I can find America, Los Angeles. Here we go. Okay, so America... That'll be easier. Make it super simple. There we go. America, Los Angeles. That way we're not worrying about any of that stuff. Let's go ahead and save that. And now let's go back to the dashboard. It's checking the update status, and this time, hopefully, it'll have the correct date and time as it does. Perfect. So, click the cloud, I assume?
Yep, go ahead. That will start the process.
What version is it? Actually, before I do that, what version did it come with? 22.01 release and 22.05 is available. So we're not too far behind. We're at least in the same major release.
Right. Not too bad at all.
Okay, confirm update. We're going to say confirm. How long does it typically take to do an update to the Netgate appliances here?
So it shouldn't take too long. With the smaller devices that aren't rack mountable, they seem to take a little bit longer, and it depends on your ISP speed. I say about 5 minutes on those types of units. Whenever I'm planning with a customer, of course, we plan for a whole hour, just in case.
Gotcha. Okay, so update is complete. I'm going to sign back in, admin, and my super strong secure password, and sign in. Okay, so we're going to say accept, and we don't need to take a survey, and we are now on 22.05-release.
Awesome.
All right, so what would be the next step? What do we do next now that we have updated the software?
So we got the system up to date. I always go ahead and check the packages as well. So under System, and I believe Package Manager, Package Manager. It's going to go ahead and check all the installed package. There's not very many of them, and it looks like they're all up to date. You would see that little update icon over by the actions if they weren't up to date.
Gotcha.
While we're here, it may be a good idea to discuss some of the packages that I normally install whenever I'm going through these. So right off the bat, a lot of clients like to do like an OpenVPN client-based VPN. So there's actually an OpenVPN client export wizard that's really nice. So I always install that right off the bat. Yep, you can just click install. There's so much available to us inside of pfSense. Essentially, OpenVPN could be a video in and of itself, but this is just a really nice tool that once you run through the OpenVPN wizard, you can actually start exporting client configurations right from pfSense. You don't have to build those by hand.
Right. And we, to be clear, we're not going to set up OpenVPN as part of this video, but if you guys are interested in seeing more advanced setup, especially with some of these add-on packages, make sure you let us know down in the comments below. So there's OpenVPN Export Wizard. It has been installed. What else do you like to install right off the bat?
Yeah. So depending on the client's needs, sometimes we'll install like an IDS/IPS or Snort to go ahead and get that installed.
All right. Yeah, confirm.
Snort is a really nice package. You do have to get a key from, I believe it's Cisco that owns them now or somebody. It's open. You can do that for free. Get a key to run the community version.
Okay.
On top of Snort, I also like to use WireGuard. That's a really, really efficient VPN. I always install
this
that.
Package here?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
And those are the big ones. Of course, if you have any other needs and you know of any other packages, you can always install them from that same panel.
Now, WireGuard, is WireGuard, I assume WireGuard's handled completely separately or differently than OpenVPN as far as the pfSense is concerned?
Exactly.
Now, would you ever do both, or is it more of a one or the other?
Yeah, so I have plenty of installations where both is very useful. So WireGuard, the client like you would install on an actual PC or a Linux box or something like that, is super lightweight. So clients who have maybe an integrated chip or something like that supports WireGuard, but they don't want to have the overhead of OpenVPN, they'll install that for those devices. And on the other devices, like Windows machines, they'll put the OpenVPN wizard or the OpenVPN client version.
Right.
Now, both of those are capable of also doing site-to-site VPN, so a mix of both of those in either case is sometimes popular.
All right, well, there we go. So we've got a few packages installed. Again, we're not going to dig too deep into the add-on packages, but we may save that for a future sort of more advanced setup video. All right, what's next?
Yeah, so the next thing is setting up, it's very easy to do, the Netgate Cloud Backup system. This is available for any of the officially purchased Netgate devices. So the Cloud Backup service is under Services, Auto Configuration Backup.
Services Auto Config Backup. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, and what is the purpose of the Auto Config Backup? Is it literally just taking a backup of your configuration automatically every so often?
Yeah, so how this works is every time you make a configuration change, it will go ahead and upload a new backup to their cloud-based server. I always like to do that type of backup whenever I set somebody up, and of course the manual backups just in case. But for this type of backup, there's a few things you need to do. Number one, you have to generate a really secure encryption password, because this is ultimately, it's going to be stored on somebody else's server. You want to make sure this encryption password is nice and long and can't be guessed.
This is the keys to your castle, so to speak. Right?
Exactly.
So you want to make sure it's well protected. Now, it also looks like, by the way, You can do it automatically back up on every configuration change, but you can also just do it on a regular schedule. It looks like you have the option there.
Very good.
Now, when you do an automatic backup on every configuration change, how many versions back does it store, or is it sort of in perpetuity?
Yeah, so I believe the maximum they'll keep is 50 whenever you do it that way. So it's quite a few. They are very small files, but it's very nice.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and walk through this. I assume we're going to enable it first. We'll just do backup on every configuration change. Now, how do we generate this encryption password?
Yeah, so you could use something like LastPass or Bitwarden to just generate a nice and secure password.
All right, so I'm going to do generate secure password. Password length?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
24? Should I go 32?
Let's do it. I think it can handle quite a few.
All right, let's do 50. How's that? Now let me do 64. Okay, there we go. 64 characters. I'm going to also add in symbols.
Nice.
And we're going to copy this password. Okay, so encryption password. We're going to paste that, and we're going to paste that. In fact, I'm going to wipe this out after we're done, so I probably don't need to save this encryption password, right?
Good point.
Okay, and then hint identifier.
Yeah, so if for some reason you need to contact Netgate to pull this down at some other point, whether it's their email support or whatever, you'll want to give them some sort of hint or identifier here. Maybe your company's name, maybe Crosstalk Solutions lab router or something like that. There's also going to be another key we're going to give them also in a few minutes. But this is a good way to help them sort through their backups if you need it.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll just say Crosstalk 4100 test router. How's that? Awesome. Oh, and then manual backups to keep. It may be useful to specify how many manual backups are retained on the server. On the server. Okay. So the automatic backups do not overwrite them. A maximum of 50 retained manual backups of the 100 total backups is permitted. So I'm just going to leave that default.
Yeah, that should be fine.
I think that's fine. All right, so we're going to say save.
Yep.
All right, what's next?
Awesome. So whenever you go through this, go ahead and go over to the Restore tab once.
Got it.
So there's a device key there. You're going to want to save that in a secure location like LastPass. That is also a way for them to help identify your router. This probably is their primary way to find it.
Gotcha. So I'm going to copy this and post it into LastPass. Of course, this will be obfuscated for the purpose of this video, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this into LastPass now. So now under Restore, we can see configuration change, and we're starting to see some current count of hosted backups. We can actually see the backups that are stored out there. And if we wanted to restore any particular backup, we can restore it, or of course we can download a specific backup if we want to. All right, let's go ahead and go back to the dashboard. What is next?
Yeah, so now we can actually start configuring the fun stuff, the actual network portion of this. Whenever we ran through the setup, it got your LAN all set up in a pretty good fashion. Maybe the next step here would be adding a VLAN, maybe a guest network.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
Awesome. So go ahead and click on the interface button and go down to assignments. Now we'll be able to see a VLAN tab up across the top.
Got it.
We'll click Add New.
And we'll just say VLAN ID 10, say.
Great.
And the parent interface is going to be LAN in this case, which LAN, I guess by default, LAN is the 4 ports switch on the device itself. Is that correct?
Right. This is different for each router, but for the 4100, that's correct.
Okay. So we're not going to mess around with those assignments, but if you wanted to, I would be able to say separate out one of the interfaces from that 4-port switch and make that its own separate sort of untagged VLAN.
Correct. Yep. So you could absolutely, I believe pfSense calls them discrete interfaces.
So I've popped in VLAN ID tag 10. We also have VLAN priority. I'm going to leave that default. For description, I'm going to say guest network, and we're going to say save. Okay, so now we have VLAN ID 10, but it doesn't have any sort of LAN subnet associated with it or DHCP server or anything like that. So I assume that would be the next step?
Yeah, so under interface assignments, we can start plugging that information in.
Now, as far as the standard WAN, right, the 192.168.1.x, does that have a default DHCP server?
Yeah, so the standard LAN, it does have one turned on by default. If you run through the wizard. Some folks skip the wizard, and you just got to make a note in the back of your mind to go and add that.
Okay, perfect. So here we are back at interface assignments.
Yep, so what we're going to want to do is click the add button there beside the VLAN 10 down at the bottom.
Got it.
And this is where we actually program up the interface. So it will assign that as OP5. Go ahead and click on that.
Got it, OP5.
Now, we're going to just run down through here and enable the interface and give it a description.
So we'll just call this guest network instead of opt5. That's easier to remember.
And then the only thing we'll really need to do here is click on IPv4 and switch it to static so we can tell it what its IP address is.
Got it.
So down below, you can give it a useful IP.
168.10.1, and then I assume we're going to be a /24, or actually that's probably what I would pick for a guest network. Right. Anything else we need to do here?
Nope, so that's all. We can just click save.
Okay, save.
And then apply.
Yeah, beautiful. So now we've created a guest network. We've also created an IPv4 address for that guest network of 192.168.10.1. We made it a /24, which is a Class C subnet, if you will. And then I assume now we would want to give it a DHCP server?
Yep, exactly, and that's under services.
Okay, so services, DHCP server. And we can see now that the guest network has been created, there's a guest network tab up here. So I'm going to click that. Enable DHCP on the guest network interface. Anything else we need to do in these default settings up here?
Yeah, so with a simple network like this, that's all fine. Honestly, for most standard networks, all you have to do is define the range. There's a plethora of options down below, like DNS and things like that, but that's the basic.
So you don't really even need to add a pool down here. That's for additional pool, it says.
Yeah, so if you were chopping up your subnet into different pools, you could do that there. I've only seen that done once or twice for specific reasons.
Yeah. So I'm just going to make it 2 to 254 since this is a guest network. Let's go ahead and give it some DNS servers. Now, of course, normally you would want to maybe make the first DNS server the IP address of the router, right?
Yep.
Now, if I say 192.168.10.1, is the pfSense already responding to DNS queries on that interface?
So it is enabled. The one thing we're going to do after we set up the DHCP server, we're going to go ahead and edit the firewall rule. So there's a firewall rule preventing that by default, or a lack of a firewall rule, I should say.
Gotcha.
But yes, it is responding to DNS inquiries.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a backup of 1.1.1.1 Cloudflare. Anything else that we need to do down here?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever need to define a gateway outside of the default interface we configured, you could do that there. But everything here is, pretty much just left how it is.
Yeah, so
there we go.
Then we want to click Save right here. Guest Network now has a DHCP server. What would be the next thing that we want to do here?
Yeah, so that will feed right into firewalling. So go ahead and click up on Firewall Rules, and let's take a moment and discuss real quick how pfSense handles all of their firewall rules. We all, with firewalling, most rule sets have a direction associated with them, in, out, or local. pfSense does everything on the inbound. If you need anything that goes a different direction or has a state associated with it, you'll want to put that in floating. But think of it this way: as we go across, WireGuard, WAN, LAN, and all these different things, it's always going to be, LAN in or guest in. Let's take a look at LAN real quick, and I'll show you. The wizard actually runs through and adds a bunch of things like an anti-lockout rule, and it also has the bottom default allow LAN to any rule. So basically, if that wasn't added, by default, any traffic that comes in from the LAN to the pfSense and destined for anywhere, the internet or another subnet, it's going to be dropped. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to recreate that rule on the guest network because it didn't do that. It was never instructed to. So go ahead and click on guest network.
Got it.
And click a little add button. The guest network is interesting because we want to restrict this down, unlike other networks. So by default, let's go ahead and work through this as like a logic problem. We're going to add the default allow. So action pass, that's good. Interface, that's good. The protocol, we want to switch that from TCP to any.
Got it.
Awesome. Source any, destination any, that's perfect. You can add a description if you'd want to. Otherwise, you can just save it.
So we're going to say allow all. And then so essentially this is saying allow all traffic out. And these rules are processed in order. So now I'm assuming the next step is now we're going to block some stuff.
Exactly.
And then once it gets down to this allow all, anything that's blocked will have already been blocked. And then allow all should ultimately, for the guest network, just allow traffic out to the internet or to specific LAN IP addresses such as the DNS resolver.
Exactly. And the next part for a guest network, I always add an alias, an RFC 1918, which is basically a way for us to encapsulate all possible internal networks. We do that in the event, a customer adds a VLAN later. We want to make sure that's also guarded against guest network traffic. So go ahead and click Apply Changes, and then we'll go to Firewall and go to Aliases.
Got it. Aliases. Add.
Yep. Go ahead and add. And
RFC, what was it, 1918?
Yep, 1918.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll want to change that from hosts to networks.
Got it.
Awesome. So the first one is 10.0.0.0, and that's a /8.
Okay.
Yep.
Add.
Yep. Then
16.0.0/16.
Oh, that's /12.
Excuse me, /12. Add network 192.168.0.0. This one would be /16.
Yep, that one's 16.
Okay.
Awesome. And
anything else we need to add there?
Nope, that's all. You can go ahead and save that.
All right.
And then apply. Yep. Now, we can go back to the firewall rules for the guest.
Okay, firewall rules, guest network.
All right. So we'll want to add one above.
Got it.
Awesome. So, yep, change the action from pass to block. And then protocol any.
Mm-hmm.
And then go ahead and put the destination as single host or alias. And you'll have to start typing in RFC, and it will pop up for you.
There we go.
Awesome. Then you can give this a description and save it.
Okay, so block RFC 1918 subnets, and we're going to hit save. And apply. Okay, so block RFC 1918 subnets. What next?
Yeah, so after we do that, we want to go ahead and add a rule on top of this. And essentially, it's a rule to allow traffic on the guest network to actually go through the interface of the guest network on the router. So want to change the protocol from TCP to any.
Got it.
And the destination will actually be guest network address.
Okay, so that's essentially 192.168.10.1 in this case.
Yep.
We're saying allow traffic from the guest network into the router on 192.168.10.1.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And then we're going to say allow. It's not really the port, but that's how I'm going to remember it. Okay, so now we've got 3 rules in here. This first rule is basically saying, hey, traffic from the guest network is allowed to pass 192.168.10.1. The second rule says we're going to block anything that is any of the RFC 1918 subnet ranges. And if we've cleared both of those, then we're going to say allow all, which essentially means you're clear to go out to the internet.
Exactly. And at this point, I always remind the customer that if you're using a guest network for Wi-Fi, which 99% of customers are, you want to make sure you enable guest control or whatever it is for your particular AP vendor to allow them to block traffic there too. The problem is if you have multiple clients on these access points without that enabled, they can contact each other because that traffic never actually gets up to the router. It stays on the switch. But if you put that on the AP, that will actually block them from communicating within their own subnet.
Yeah, so basically for whatever vendor of access point you're using, there's typically a designation to make an SSID a guest network SSID, and you want to make sure that is enabled.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me apply changes here, and great. Well, we're rolling right along. What is the next step that we would want to do in this case?
Yeah, so after we review firewalls, the other thing we talk about is whether or not they're hosting a PBX on their network, and if there are any firewall rules that need to be added to that. With pretty much any PBX that you're locally hosting, you'll want to go ahead at minimum and disable what's called port rewriting. Outbound connections from pfSense, it always rewrites the port, and that's fine for almost everything except for RTP streams.
Okay.
So this is fairly simple. You'll want to go to Firewall and NAT.
All right, Firewall and NAT, got it.
Awesome. And then outbound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and click Add a Rule above.
Got it.
And essentially what we want to do here is we want to limit this down to the scope of just the PBX itself. So what I would do is I would go ahead under source and change that from network to, so I see what we want to do here. You would put in the IP address of your PBX there and make it a /32.
So we'll say the PBX is running at 1.10.
Yeah, yep.
/32.
Exactly. And then we just scroll down a little bit further and go and check static port. And essentially what this is going to do, it's going to go ahead and ensure that it doesn't
static
rewrite.
port?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Then you would just click save for that.
And then we'll put a description like, do not overwrite PBX traffic.
Perfect.
Okay. And save that.
Yeah, and beyond that, adding firewall rules really depends on who you're using PBX-wise. Honestly, that would probably be a video of itself.
Yeah, no, of course. So this is good enough for a simple setup, though. This means that at this point we have gone through the wizard, we've created our standard LAN, we've now also created a guest network, and we've created some firewall rules to ensure that the guest network can not only get out to the internet, but is also blocked from getting to any of the other LAN subnets, even subnets that are created in the future that don't exist yet.
Yeah, and one more thing here I should point out is we want to change this from automatic outbound NAT to, let's see here, hybrid outbound NAT, so it's generating rules on its own, and it will take into consideration the rules we add.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll save that and apply changes. Perfect. All right, beautiful. Well, what else is this considered done as far as a really basic setup, or is there anything else that you would consider here?
Yeah, so just basics, that's pretty much it. I mean, we could always talk about QoS, dynamic DNS, adding VPNs and things like that, but this is really just a really solid foundation.
Okay, perfect. Well, David, once again, I thank you for taking the time to explain all of these various rules and whatnot. Of course, Crosstalk Solutions is here to help you with any of your pfSense needs. Most likely you'd be talking to the man David here himself. So David's about to go on vacation, so we're going to let him go on vacation now. Thank you for doing this with us today, David.
Absolutely.
And again, really looking forward to the Crosstalk Fundamentals of Networking coming up in mid-August. Or if you're watching this video after mid-August, make sure you check events.crosstalksolutions.com for other networking courses that may be coming to your area very soon. All right, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. My name is Chris with Crosstalk Solutions, along with Dave Barger, also of Crosstalk Solutions. And thank you guys so much for watching.